Warm greetings everyone. I'm Dr. Purnima Khanna from Khalsa College of Law, Amritsar. Today's topic of discussion is status of personal laws in constitutional scheme. In the present module, you will learn about introduction, personal laws under the constitutional scheme, Article 13 and personal laws, then whether personal laws are laws or laws in force or not with the help of judicial response, then Article 44 and Uniform Civil Code, Uniform Civil Code Bill, and finally the conclusion. Dear friends, let's begin with the introductory part. Personal laws are a set of laws that apply to a certain class or a group of people or a particular person based on religion, faith, and culture. In India, personal laws guided by religion are applicable in the civil realm, which covers aspects like marriage, divorce, guardianship, adoption, as well as succession. These are broadly characterized as family laws. At present, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, and Parsis are governed by their own set of personal laws in India, as a consequence of which there is no uniformity in Indian family laws. Despite calls for a uniform civil code from the time of the drafting of the constitution, personal laws have largely been left untouched by all the governments in power. Now let's begin our discussion on personal laws under the constitutional scheme. Constitution of India being the grand norm, every law needs to be in conformation with the constitutional provisions. Any law which is in derogation of the constitutional provisions is considered to be unconstitutional and void. To understand the position of personal laws under the Indian constitutional scheme, it is important to analyze the provisions of Article 13. Now let's discuss what is the correlation between Article 13 and personal laws. Article 13, Clause 3 of the Indian Constitution stipulates that number 1, all laws in force in territory of India immediately before the commencement of this constitution, insofar as they are inconsistent with the provisions of this part, shall to the extent of such inconsistency be void. Secondly, the state shall not make any law which takes away or abridges the rights conferred by this part, and any law made in contravention of this clause shall to the extent of the contravention be void. Thirdly, in this article, unless the context otherwise requires, a law includes any ordinance, order, bylaw, rule, regulation, notification, custom, or usage having in the territory of India the force of law. Secondly, laws in force includes laws passed or made by the legislature or other competent authority in the territory of India before the commencement of this constitution and not previously repealed, notwithstanding that any such law or any part thereof may not be then in operation either at all or in particular areas. This article protects the individual's fundamental rights by rendering any law null and void if it is inconsistent in any way with the fundamental right of the person. There have been several cases in which the judiciary has deliberated upon the issue of personal laws being covered by Article 13. Now here comes an important question whether personal laws are laws or laws in force or not. We will understand this point with the help of judicial response. The first landmark case in this regard was State of Bombay versus Narsu Appamalli in 1951. The Bombay High Court in this landmark case held that personal laws are not covered within the ambit of the expression laws and laws in force contained in Article 13. In this case, the validity of the Bombay Prevention of Hindu Bigamous Marriages Act 1946, which prohibits bigamous marriages amongst Hindus, was challenged. The two-judge bench held that personal laws fall outside the ambit of Article 13. The bench was of the view that the expression laws in force only refers to statutory laws. The judges also relied on the Government of India Act 1915. The court referred to Section 113 of Government of India Act 1915, which provides that in case of inheritance, succession and other similar matters, when both parties are followers of the same personal laws, the High Court should apply the same in deciding the matter, and when the parties follow different personal laws, the High Court should apply the defendant's personal laws. Thus, the Government of India Act recognized a clear distinction between personal laws, statutory laws and customs. In this regard, Justice Chagla opined that since the Constituent Assembly actively used the expression custom and usages in the definition of law in Article 13, it intended for them to be tested against Part 3 of the Constitution. At the same time, however, the definition of Article 13 was purposely made to exclude personal laws so that immunity could be granted to these personal laws from any constitutional challenges. Justice Chagla further elaborated that this intention of the legislature to exclude personal laws from the scope of Article 13 of the Constitution is also clear from the fact that the legislature specifically included other provisions such as Article 17, 25, 26 and 372 in the Constitution. Justice Chagla reasoned that if personal laws were assumed to be included in the definitions of laws in India and Article 13 was to apply to these personal laws and invalidate them, then what would leave Articles 17, 25, 26 and 372 redundant? In other words, Justice Chagla argued that it is clear that the Constituent Assembly had intended to test personal laws under Part 3 of the Constitution. It would not have specifically inserted Articles 17 and 25A, B to prohibit or invalidate some facets of Hindu personal laws for being violative of Articles 14 and 15. In his last observation, Justice Chagla argued that Article 44 of the Constitution highlights the existence of separate personal laws in India. In this regard, Entry 5 of the concurrent list that vests with the legislatures the power to enact laws is a specific provision that empowers the legislatures to amend the personal laws when necessary and ultimately establish the Uniform Civil Code. According to Justice Chagla, the scheme of the Constitution on the subject of personal laws is thus clear, which seems to be to leave personal laws unaffected, except where specific provision is made with regard to it, and leave it to the legislatures in future to modify and improve it, and ultimately to pub on the statute book a common and uniform code. In the end, Justice Chagla also laid emphasis on Article 372 Clause 1 and Clause 2, holding that the expression laws in force in this article does not include personal laws, as Article 373 Clause 2 empowers the President to amend or repeal the law in force, and it cannot be concluded that the Constituent Assembly intended to authorize the President to amend or alter the personal laws of any community. Thus, my dear learners, Justice Chagla argued that since personal laws in India cannot be considered as statutory laws, they could not be tested against fundamental rights under Article 13 of the Constitution. The personal laws thus were outside the scope of Part 3 of the Indian Constitution. Another important case is Sayyida Tahir Saifuddin Sahib versus State of Bombay 1962. In this case, the court has laid down that a practice implemented on an obnoxious social rule or practice may be within the ambit of social reform that the legislation may carry out. The legislation should aim to bring about social reform by placing constitutional morality over societal morality and to carefully scrutinize claims to deny constitutional protection in the name of religion. It is the duty of the legislation to strike at the heart of the social evil and provide protection of the fundamental right of every person to freedom of religion under Article 25. Another important case is Reynold Rajamani and Others versus Union of India 1982. Similar to the judgment pronounced in Maharishi Avdesh in Reynold Rajamani versus Union of India 2, the Supreme Court refused to interfere in the matter relating to the constitutionality of Section 7 and 10 of the Indian Divorce Act 1869. The petitioner had moved the court on the ground that the option of divorce by mutual consent should be available to every married couple, irrespective of the religion to which they belong. It was argued that since this option of divorce by mutual consent was available under Section 28 of the Special Marriage Act 1954, Section 13B of Hindu Marriage Act 1955, as well as Section 2, Clause 9 of the Dissolution of Muslim Marriage Act 1939, but was not included in the Indian Divorce Act. It resulted in violation of Article 14 of the Indian Constitution. The court, however, dismissing the appeal, held that whether a provision for divorce by mutual consent should be included in the Indian Divorce Act is a matter of legislative policy. The courts cannot extend or enlarge legislative policy by adding a provision to the statute which was never enacted there. Next important case on the subject matter is John Vallamatham and Others versus Union of India 2003. In this case, while holding that Section 118 of the Indian Succession Act 1925 was unconstitutional for being violative of Articles 14, 15, 25 and 26 of the Constitution, the court observed that the right of equality of women vis-a-vis their male counterpart is accepted worldwide. It will be immoral to discriminate against women on the grounds of sex. It is forbidden both in our domestic law as well as also under international law. Even the right of women to derive interest in a property by way of inheritance, gift or bequest is statutorily accepted by reason of Hindu Succession Act 1956 and some other enactments. This court, therefore, while considering constitutionality of Section 118 of the Indian Succession Act, is entitled to take those facts also into consideration. The recent case of Shaira Bano versus Union of India 2017 is a landmark judgment on the subject matter. In this historic case, the dispute between Part 3 of the Constitution and the religious personal laws was raised again. It was seen by many as a golden opportunity for resolving the conflict between the religious personal laws as well as between the constitutional rights. Although the court held that triple talaq was unconstitutional by examining it in accordance with Part 3 of the Constitution and that the Narsu Appamalli judgment needed reconsideration. The fundamental dispute in law was left completely unresolved. Subjecting personal laws to constitutional scrutiny is an important step in the direction of constitutional vision. Hence, the decision in the Narsu Appamalli case concerning immunization, uncodified personal laws, and distinctive customs and usage should be reconsidered in an appropriate case in the future. Very recently, in Indian Young Lawyers Association versus State of Kerala, popularly known as Sabrimala Temple case of 2019, the Narsu Appamalli judgment was overruled by Justice Chandrachud. In this case, the custom of not allowing women into the Sabrimala temple was challenged before the apex court, and the question arose whether customs come within the ambit of Article 13. Justice Chandrachud noted that the definition of law under Article 13 is an inclusive definition. The court observed that articles of the Constitution are not essentially independent of each other, and in some instances there may be overlapping with the other articles. Thus, merely because the inclusion of customs within Article 13 would affect Article 17, it could not be held that customs are not covered within the expression laws in force. The court also referred to the judgment of Shaira Bano versus Union of India 2017, in which the apex court had expressed doubt over the Narsu Appamalli judgment. The court pointed out that personal laws, customs, and usages have a significant impact on the civil life of individuals. Hence, customs and personal laws cannot be exempted from the purview of judicial scrutiny. The court thus came to the conclusion that customs as well as the personal laws are covered by Article 13 and can be subjected to judicial review. Justice D.Y. Chandrachud in this case held that customs, usages, and personal laws have a significant impact on the civil status of individuals. Those activities that are inherently connected with the civil status of individuals cannot be granted constitutional immunity merely because they may have some associational features which have a religious nature. To immunize them from constitutional scrutiny is to deny the primacy of the Constitution. My dear learners, here another important point is Article 44 and Uniform Civil Code. When the Constitution was adopted, it recognized the continuation of various personal laws in India, and accordingly, Article 44 was included in the Constitution. The framers of the Constitution were optimistic that a day will come when the people themselves will adopt a uniform civil code for themselves. Such recognition is also apparent from entry number 5 of the list of the 7th schedule of the Constitution. Therefore, even a cursory perusal of all these provisions would give rise to this impression that personal laws operating in India immediately before adoption of the Constitution have been continued by Article 372, Clause 1, subject to the provisions of the Constitution by Article 13, Clause 1, to the provisions in Part 3 in particular. Article 372 provides that all the laws in force in the territory of India immediately before the commencement of this Constitution shall continue in force therein until altered or repealed or amended by a competent legislature or other competent authority. The Uniform Civil Code aims to establish a uniform legal framework for all citizens, regardless of their religion. Article 44 in the Directive Principles of State Policy, found in Part 4th of the Constitution, states that the state shall endeavour to secure for all the citizens a uniform civil code throughout the territory of India. Uniform Civil Code is meant to replace various laws currently applicable to various communities, which are inconsistent with each other. These laws include the Hindu Marriage Act, Hindu Succession Act, Indian Christian Marriages Act, Indian Divorce Act, Parsi Marriage and Divorce Act, etc. Meanwhile, certain codes like Sharia or Islamic laws are not codified and solely based upon religious scriptures and interpretations. It is pertinent to note that Uniform Civil Code is already successfully working in the Indian state by the name of Goa Civil Code. It is a set of civil laws, originally the Portuguese Civil Code, which continues to be implemented even after the Indian annexation of the state in 1961. Another important point is Uniform Civil Code Bill. The demand for a Uniform Civil Code was first put forward by women activists in the beginning of the 20th century, with the objective of women's rights, equality and secularism. Till independence in 1947, a few law reforms were passed to improve the condition of women, especially Hindu widows. In 1956, the Indian Parliament passed Hindu Code Bill amidst significant opposition. Though a demand for a uniform civil code was made by Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, his supporters and women activists, they had to finally accept the compromise of it being added to the directive principles because of heavy opposition. Recently, the Indian government has introduced the Uniform Civil Code Bill. Supporters of the Uniform Civil Code argue that it fosters national integration and gender equality. The proposals in Uniform Civil Code include monogamy, equal rights for son and daughter over inheritance of paternal property, and gender and religion neutral laws with regards to will, charity, divinity, guardianship and sharing of custody. These proposals may not result in much difference to the status of Hindu society, as they have already been applicable on Hindus through the Hindu laws for decades. One of the significant advantages of a uniform civil code is its potential to promote gender equality. In the existing system, personal laws based on religious practices often discriminate against women, particularly in matters of inheritance, divorce, and maintenance. Implementing a uniform civil code can ensure equal rights for women in all the communities, empowering them to make decisions regarding their personal lives. By abolishing gender-based discrimination, a uniform civil code can contribute to the overall progress of the society, enabling women to fully participate in the economic, social and political affairs. However, concerns have been raised that its enforcement may infringe upon the rights and distinct practices of minority communities in the state. It is argued that a uniform nation does not necessarily imply a unified nation, and many believe that the Uniform Civil Code will erode the boundaries of tolerance despite being non-cognizable. The bill is opposed on the ground that it would destroy the social fabric of the country. Religious minorities and tribal communities fear that a uniform civil code would rob them of their constitutional rights to freedom of religion and culture by imposing a state-determined set of do's and don'ts. They fear that Uniform Civil Code would impose a majoritarian or homogeneous law that would disregard their identity and diversity. On June 14, 2023, the Law Commission initiated a fresh consultation process on the Uniform Civil Code by seeking views from the stakeholders, including public and recognized religious organizations, on this politically sensitive issue. My dear learners, in last, we may conclude that India is a multicultural society and various groups have different personal laws in India. In a social welfare state such as India, the judiciary must take a militant stand to abolish all prejudice it does as a judicial activism. Judicial advocacy has in many cases dealt with personal laws issues. It is only by doing so that the massive forms of discrimination in personal laws are curbed and the constitutional values of equality and fraternity are thus achieved. Not considering personal law's law under Article 13 of the Constitution and keeping it outside the purview of judicial review gives rise to dangerous situations where women will be made victims of male dominance and abuse and social exploitation without any legal remedy. The role of the Constitution as a document is for social transformation and not merely based on socio-political or religious reasons. At the heart of transformative constitutionalism is a vision and potential to change, considering personal laws to be consistent with the fundamental rights by acknowledging minorities like women and lower castes as equal members of Indian society. The feasible nature of the Constitution and the dynamic and ever-growing change in the society. The idea of constitutionalism is redefining through judicial precedents. The idea of courts is to transform society by placing individual dignity at the forefront and value constitutional morality over societal morality, and hoping whenever the challenge to personal laws is raised, these grounds will be considered. With this, we come to the end of today's lecture. Thank you very much.